From donating spare change to using your spare time to advocate for change. From making efforts to include someone to creating an environment where everyone belongs. From campaigning for liberty and justice for all to striving for liberty and justice for all. From giving someone a hand when they speak up for what's right to lending a hand as a volunteer. From participating to fully participating. Active citizenship is a cornerstone of democracy. Through its grant-making, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation aims to strengthen both, and we are proud to present a series of open discussions on civic engagement and civil discourse implemented by SNF Dialogues, curated and moderated by Anna Kynthia Bousdoukou, and in collaboration with the New York Public Library, the University of Delaware, and the SNF Agora Institute at Johns Hopkins University. More information at snf.org. Stavros Niarchos Foundation, empowering humanity.
Hello everyone and welcome. We're very happy you're here with us today. First of all, allow me to introduce myself to you. I am Anna Kynthia Bousdoukou, Executive Director of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Dialogues Initiative, an initiative which started back in 2017 with a very specific, but very simple though, I would say, goal to foster idea exchanges and at the same time to support the crucial need for citizens to express themselves, all while upholding values like diversity and equity. 7 years on, the SNF Dialogues has grown into much more than just public discussions. And today it's a broad, open, and free platform to everyone. Actually, you have a card with a QR code. You found it on your seats. If you can scan it, you can directly join our platform where you can find opinion articles, podcasts, videos, of course, discussions from our public events on demand. And this platform tackles actually a vast range of issues that matter to us as citizens by using, as I said, a variety of formats. During this time, we've hosted 56 public discussions on topics as varied as environmental crisis, artificial intelligence, but also geopolitical issues, and especially in the Eastern Mediterranean. Today, we're kicking off here in the US a new series centered on civic engagement and civil discourse. Our aim is very clear: to spark an essential conversation about the role of citizens in maintaining the strength of our democracy, especially in the face of current challenges, and there are many. We all know that the lines between hate speech and open dialogue have totally been blurred, increasingly dividing and polarizing our public space. So it seems that one of the things that can help us restore this public space, our space as citizens, is civic discourse. We are therefore here to discuss the crucial and critical importance of civic engagement, the ongoing struggle for equal rights, and why it's necessary to create safe spaces for citizens to explore and even reaffirm their identities. And it is not a coincidence that we are starting this discussion in a library. Because libraries are much more than book repositories. Libraries are community centers, safe havens during crisis, and not only, bastions of knowledge and equality, and at the same time, they're shining examples of democracy, especially in uncertain times. And all these principles resonate with the mission, overall of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation since its inception. So at this moment, I would like to invite the co-president of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, Andreas Drakopoulos, on the stage.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you all for coming here today. Just a few thoughts, which are basically some factual thoughts. Who are we? The Stavros Niarchos Foundation, the SNF. We've been around for 28 years since our founder passed away back in 1996. We've been active in more than 134 countries around the world. We have committed close to 3.8 billion. We have no agenda, we have no policy. We don't try to impose anything, we just try to contribute as much as we can in different ways in the four main areas, which is basically can cover everything, because it's education, health and sports, social welfare, arts and culture. I wanted to thank also Tony Marks and everybody here at the Public Library. I was honored already a couple of decades ago to serve on the board across the street, and we were very honored to have been asked to contribute to renovate this magnificent building. And we viewed it since then as this being the real New York Public Library campus on both sides of Fifth Avenue. So thank you to Tony Marks and everybody at the library. Libraries. We have been actively supporting libraries since our inception. We have supported libraries in more than 10 countries, of course in the US, not only in the New York Public Library system, but also Queens and Brooklyn, in the UK, in Greece, and as far as in Thailand. So libraries, we really believe in what they are, in what their mission is, their vision, and their role in today's complicated times that we all live in. And it's my favorite book as a title, more than anything, is Eric Klinenberg's, who is an author and sociologist. And the book is titled Palaces for the People. And it goes on how social infrastructure can help fight inequality, polarization, and the decline of civil and civic life. Andrew Carnegie said that more than 100 years ago, spoke about libraries being really the palaces for the people. Civic engagement and civil discourse. In a way, we shouldn't even be talking about it. We are humans. We are supposed to be engaged and we're supposed to be civil. But we have to talk about it because what's happening all around us shows the need that we all have to engage. And do so in a civil way. We don't have to agree on everything, but at least we should have a dialogue. And the word dialogue comes from the Greek word dialogos, which comes from dialogo, which means by means of discussing. And discussing means both talking and listening. So it's a very important aspect of us, one of the remaining human traits that we have that differentiate us from other species. So we should really engage in it. I wanted to also thank, because again, we view all of our grantees as our real partners. And in the civic engagement, civil discourse area, we have a lot of them. And we're very proud of all these collaborations. And some of them are being represented here today. We have the university-based initiatives, the SNF Pedia program at the University of Pennsylvania, the SNF Agora Institute at Johns Hopkins University, the SNF Ithaca initiative at the University of Delaware. We have, with physical spaces like with Lincoln Center, we have been working together to reactivate the public spaces around Lincoln Center. we work with the Obama Foundation, with the Thalberg Foundation, with the One Campaign, and also other programs in schools like Generation Citizen, and other like the sixth graders learning about the origins of American democracy at the New York Historical Society. So a wide variety of partners. And again, just trying to contribute to make this a better place. So with this in mind, I'll pass the microphone to the real actors today. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm taking in parallel the application that I'm inviting all of you who are here with us. Probably the majority of you have already downloaded because the registration system went through this, but also whoever is joining us virtually, hi to all of you who are connected and attend this discussion through the live stream. But if you don't have it, you can scan this QR code so that you can download the application of the SNF Dialogues, because through this application, we would like to receive your ideas, your questions, your thoughts, your concerns, with whatever you may disagree, anything, whatever you would like to share with us, exactly because, as I said earlier, the Dialogue initiative tries to support whatever we do call true dialogue, even if it becomes difficult and tough. The effort is to remain under and through the democratic process and spirit. So we would like to send us whatever you would like to add to our conversation. And now, without further ado, let us move forward and welcome on stage Dr. Tony Marks, President and COO of the New York Public Library. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's a pleasure and honor. And Aris Kalandidis, urban scholar and academic advisor at New York University in Berlin. Dr. Aris Kalandidis, welcome.
I don't get a kiss?
Of course you do, of course, because I have to say that we have done a great work together and into another previous discussion of dialogues about the importance of public space. So we're here today to see the importance of libraries as an urban spaces overall. So please, thank you again for being here with us today. We decided to keep the whole set up very, very similar because we love the way that the theme and the importance will be raised. So just be careful with your waters, with your bottles. Okay, we don't have tables, but allow me to introduce to you also all the people, wonderful personalities and experts in its field who are joining today this discussion, because we will hear very important things from you and very interesting points of view from your experiences. And this is the architect who designed the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, and we're very happy because we were able to have this great view today by opening the curtains. So thank you so much, Francine Huben, for being here with us today. Founding partner and creative director at Mekano Architects. Today is also joining the discussion the managing librarian from the Teen Center of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, Ritsi Yuhiko. Welcome, Ritsi, and thank you for being here. Together with Ritsi is one of the team members of her team, Kaylin Motsoasele. Welcome, Kaylin, thank you. But of course, we will not stay only here on the Fifth Avenue, but we will go very close and not so far to the neighborhood of Bronx. And that's the reason why is here with us Kathleen Carrasco. coming from the Bronx Neighborhood Library Networks of the New York Public Library, is the Borough Director of the library, and thank you so much for being here with us. So let's start with you, Tony. What do libraries mean to you, personally, though?
Well, first, let me start by saying thank you to you, Anna, and to Ares, it's an honor to be in this conversation. It's an honor to have Andreas, Vasily, and colleagues from the Niarchos Foundation here. You could tell from that introduction what amazing partners they are. Not all of our donors are as equal partners and humble and insightful and guiding, and that's just been a huge pleasure. And a special shout out to my colleagues who are here. The spaces that Francine helped to make incredible are essential. They speak to our respect and our welcoming of our public of all kinds. We're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. But it's my colleagues like Ricky and Kathleen and everyone who are here who are really the lifeblood of this institution. And it's inspiring to me to work with them, to be able to support them, to learn from them, and to work together with them. So thank you for everything you do. So I'll just start by saying I grew up in New York, in Inwood, which is not a fancy neighborhood. I was just there the other day. We're opening a brand new branch there, brand new, fully renovated with 175 units of 100% affordable housing above. The first time in our history we've used the air, which we now aspire to use, because there are so many problems for us to solve and that we need to partner to solve more of them. Because I grew up in Inwood, I never walked in the building across the street. I thought it was much too fancy for the likes of me, much too intimidating. Never happened. This building, which, shall we say, was less intimidating, a bit of a dump after decades of relative neglect, felt much more like my kind of place. It was also where the circulating library was, and this was my home in high school. Little did I know that it would become this and become more than a home for me. The point of the story is to say libraries should never be intimidating. The architecture is amazing, as is this in its own way. That's not the point. That's the opposite of the point. The point is to welcome everyone. So we've been thinking very hard, so I'll start with the Schwartzman building across the street. We said, what more can we do to make the public feel like there is a place for them there, even if they're not using the research collection, which is more typically for researchers and scholars, though anyone is welcome to use those collections. And we encourage that. But for the general public, it wasn't clear what they were going to do or see. So as an example, we looked around and we said, the research library has some of the most amazing treasures anyone has. We have the original Bill of Rights of the United States. We have one of two copies in the world of the Declaration in Jefferson's hand with his edits, including edits about slavery. We have the only copy in the world of the letter from Christopher Columbus to King Ferdinand in 1492, saying, I think I found something. And then summarizing every argument for colonialism that would be invented in the next 300 years. Amazing things that the public never saw. We were busy keeping them safe, which is our job, but that's not our only job. Our job is to use them, forgive me for saying this, as bait. To say, come in and see this amazing material. And now that you're interested and curious, let us introduce you to what this library can offer, what that library can offer, for anyone. And that's just the beginning of it. We created a new plaza across the street, literally kitty corner to this, where there was a mechanical shed. Don't get me started. That is now majestic, and it's a statement, as Andrea said, that said, this is a campus. it isn't fancy folks over here and everyone else over here. It's everyone going back and forth. This floor of program space for authors and this kind of essential public discussion, and that is what we are doing here today, is part of that notion of campus, right? The terrace, again, thanks to Francine's vision, makes that a reality for everyone. And that's just the start. We have a new visitor center across the street. We'll do anything. And we'll come back to this building, I am confident, which is truly quite remarkable. Or let me just say a word about this building. Our biggest branch library, with the biggest circulating collection, which is still essential for people. But not just that. And those are fabulous 3 floors. There's a wall of books. There's, twice as much seating on those spaces because Francine came up with the brilliant idea of putting the books into this majestic bookshelf, if you will, that is 3 stories tall, that is so inspiring, but also means we have twice as much floor space. The books aren't in the window where they used to be. People are in the windows because people are alive. Books are not, in their way. But beyond that, and go take a look, there's an entire floor right below us that is dedicated to educational programming. A decade ago, this and all other libraries were basically passive space. Come, use it, essential, especially in the poorest neighborhoods where there is no other public space, welcoming, respectful space. We said that's not enough. What are the educational needs in every neighborhood, including the poorest? So the center of that is in this building, an entire floor focused, in this case, on adult education, English language for immigrants, because we are the first stop for immigrants. Computer skills, essential for finding jobs, which will also help you do. And we also do education programs for kids, after school, homework help, early literacy. Kathleen knows we're doing this in the Bronx. Again, in the poorest neighborhoods of New York, but a whole floor here, and then connected to that floor, again, Francine's brilliance, an entire floor to help you find a job or start a business.
And that's why, sorry for interrupting you, Tony, so that I can
almost done. I'm almost done.
Having the process of dialogue. That's why it's very important to see nowadays, and this will be actually a question to Francine, but in a few minutes, based on all the roles, the real roles that a public library should play and through them serve the community, what actually should take care of an architect?
Well, I'll let
That would
Francine
be
jump in, but
my-
I'll just
my
say
question
I don't want to leave out.
later. No,
there's an
because
entire floor in the basement. Ricky and her colleagues are there that has an amazing children's library as well as a teen center that is filled with the most unbelievable gizmos, because that's what the teens want. Again, I'm not going to hide from the fact that this is bait. Get them in with the music studios and the maker space, and we can talk about education programs. We can talk about the books. We can talk about civics, all the other possibilities, college guidance that we also do. And again, it's what happens in this building that's important, but it's only possible because it's a space that makes that possible and is saying just with its majesty, everyone is respected and everyone is welcome.
But I would like to stay a bit more personally, Aris. What does library mean to you personally?
So I think my connection to libraries is a bit autobiographical to begin with that. I was a very introverted and shy teenager. You wouldn't tell today, but I was. And the library that I had very close to home in Athens, which was one of the very few libraries we have, unfortunately, in that city, which is the Library of the French Institute, was my refuge. So I would spend time in there to protect myself from outer space, from having to communicate with other people. And it was a very old-fashioned library. So it didn't have many books, but it had interesting stuff. And I would spend time in there and would pick a book from a shelf and sit down and read or pretend to read. But I would spend time in there. It felt safe. And we'll come back to that because in the research I've been doing, that kind of safe space as a library was important to me. So that was the first contact.
It doesn't exist in many neighborhoods in any other form, especially for free.
Right. So that's what I'm coming to now. Because when for a period of time, I worked in Bogota, in Colombia. And I'm an urban planner and I'd had some work to do there. And they took me to a library in one of the poorest neighborhoods of the city, a neighborhood that felt very unsafe. And I realized that library, it had checks at the entrance, but still it was one of the very few really safe spaces. And it was not just a safe space for weird kids like me. It was really safe space for people who are in danger. What were the two only safe spaces in at least that people felt like safe spaces in Bogota? Shopping malls and libraries. And shopping malls you have to consume. Library was the only real safe public space you did not have to consume. And the way that libraries were positioned in the city of Bogota, you had the central library in the very old, colonial center, but then you had all these libraries in the poorest neighborhoods. And I realized for the first things, there are families that go there and just watch a film because you can book a room and watch a film because they have no video at home. So this is something that completely changed my understanding, not just of the library as space, but library in the urban fabric and what it can do. And I came here earlier. I had I went down to Washington Square to meet some old students of mine to talk about what is happening at NYU, and we had this huge discussion about democracy and protests and what you can do. And I was really, my head was aching, and I came back here and spent the last 3 hours in this building and made a point of sitting at every table, every floor, trying to realize who I'm sitting with, try to understand what people are doing. And it was both. So I had both that feeling of safety that I needed as a 20-year-old and that sense that I am in a space that is open to everybody. And Tony Marx is not exaggerating. This is everybody, right? And that's amazing.
On what you say, I've heard...
We talk too much.
I've heard Tony saying something the other day. And it was the following: the library is a place that allows everyone to choose what they want to be. Mm-hmm. And I feel, from what I want to be personally, I automatically feel safety, I feel comfortable, and at some point I also feel responsible so that I can protect this treasure.
Can I add to that, Anna? Everyone comes here, and everyone should. Literally everyone. It's the only place that's true of in New York. And they come for what they need. But it's more than that. Just the symbolic power that people experience of being welcomed without any papers, without any credentials, respected, in a space that is majestic and therefore respecting of them. When I started the job, I remember someone said to me, "Oh, that's where the homeless go." I was like, yeah, we should be damn proud of that. It's where everyone can go, the Nobel laureate to the homeless to everyone in between, across the street as well as here. And it does something for you to be in a place that has everyone. New York is New York because of its diversity. That's why, apologies, we are the center of the world. And yet we still live in our neighborhoods. We stay in our comfort zones. You come to a library and you sit with the full mix And suddenly, you're curious. You can read about other people's lives as well as your own identity. You become empathetic. You become comfortable being with each other, even before we get to the dialogues, which this is such a great example of, right? And it just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. I shouldn't do this, but when the library called me about this job, which is an amazing job, and no, I'm really enjoying it. You can't have it. I went to the Inwood Library where I grew up and wandered around and asked people what they were doing. All right, it's a little creepy, but there was someone who described running his business out of the library because he couldn't afford it otherwise. He didn't have internet at home. 2 million New Yorkers don't have internet at home. They come to the library. There was a public school teacher reading books, heartbreaking, 5 levels below the grade level she was teaching, to figure out what would work for her students. There was a guy, only spoke Spanish. My Spanish is okay, not great. We talked. He explained that he'd been in the country for a year or two. He was illiterate, but he came to the library every day at lunch. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I read books, picture books, because that's what I can appreciate." I said, "Show me." And he took me to a table where he had a big art book open to Renaissance masterpieces from Europe. And he said, "I come to the library to look at pictures of angels." And I thought, oh man, I gotta work for this place, because there's no place else like it.
Aris, while many view libraries as places of silence, isolation, etc., they are important for the community, from what we get here. The question is, how does the community aspect manifest itself within these quiet spaces?
That's a difficult question, Anna, because you have to think a bit of what libraries used to be, and we need to go a bit back. Originally, you said, I think you used the word earlier, what were libraries? They were depositories of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. So the main idea of the library is you have an archive. There is a place where books are put. And then on the other side, you have users. So people who need to access that knowledge, who study, who like reading, or whatever that is. And the library was some kind of the space, a kind of an intermediary. That was where that could take place, that exchange between the two. But that's where the difficulty starts, because first of all, the archive itself, so this idea of repository of knowledge, is always extremely selective. What have you got in a library and what does not go in the library? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about how that's changed today. But I mean, it used to be books. Think of the old Library of Alexandria that was in Egypt, so you can imagine what was in there. But the aspiration was to have all the available knowledge of humanity of that time, right? So it was comprehensive. And the very famous literary library that is the Library of Babel in Borges's work, La Biblioteca de Babel. And what is that? That's a library that is supposed to contain every volume that has ever been written, that is being written, and will be written. The effect is gibberish. So the effect is that you have a library that not even the librarians can navigate in any way. So this has changed very much, and I hope we'll talk about it afterwards, because the whole digitization, big data, and so on is changing that idea completely. And then on the other hand, you had that public, right? You talked about your Hispanic gentleman who came in to look at angels. But for many decades, most people were actually excluded by libraries, by definition. In this very famous work by Virginia Woolf, which is A Room of One's Own, she is rejected from Oxbridge, as she calls it, as a woman. And it was a gendered thing, it was a class thing, it was a racial thing. So libraries worked by exclusion, and that is changing too. And then you have that space in the middle, which is the library. And the library used to be what brought these selected works with those selected people together, and this has completely changed. So what we see is we see libraries that all the things we've talked about. They're safe spaces, they're inclusive spaces, they are spaces of knowledge, still spaces of love of reading. I mean, that's still the main function. But then when I spend time in here, and as an educator, I was looking at all these classes that were taking place. I was looking at at the entrance, when I entered on the left, there was a group of people discussing. I'm not exactly sure what they were doing, but they were discussing. And I thought, yes, that's it. That's it. This is a community, whatever that community was, that has appropriated that space and is making it a space of dialogue. Mm-hmm. And we've said so much about Francine already, but that's, once again, it's an amazing job that the architects have done in the design of that space. I'd like to come back and talk about community later, because I think we have some new developments on that, but I think enough for the time being.
And we're going directly to Bronx right now. Because Kathleen Carrasco, director of the Bronx Neighborhood Library Networks of the New York Public Library, it would be very important at this point if you could please share with us your experience and how the community of Bronx has been affected, has been impacted by the library.
Hi, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Tony, for this as well. In my experience with the Bronx communities, I started with the New York Public Library about 22 years ago. And the biggest thing, yes, and it started as a library page, putting away the books back. And part of that effort and a part of being with the library and working in the Bronx, it's seeing folks within my own community using the library and what the library is able to offer. And part of this is enriching the lives of everyone is around you. And what inspired me to continue with the New York Public Library is the love of knowledge to access and information that for those may not be possible for. Because if my thing is, if you don't know something, what is the library's role is to inform our community. And part of that is building community. And what I loved about what we were able to do in the Bronx for the libraries there is giving everyone that walks through our doors that opportunity of information. And that can be coming in for the ESL classes, to learn English as a second language, and doing the pathways to additional services that we're able to offer for them. If it's trying to become a business owner, what are those different means that you're able to get to that? Like here in this library, we have the business center. It's connecting them with that information. And then also parents that are coming in for those ESL classes, what about for their kids? We offer NYPO after-school programs. And then part of that is, it's a free program for ages 6 to 12, drop-in service for that as well. And we have seen a great impact of what it has done for the kids in our local communities. And I'm proud to say, as a Bronx side resident, living in the Bronx as well, you get to see that firsthand when I get to see and hear the teachers and the educators talk about the programs that the library offers and how they also help me to connect that with the students and the parents in the community. Mm-hmm. And part of it is technology as well. The Bronx, we also have a digital equity issue in the Bronx, as Tony mentioned. We're still 2 million residents in New York City who don't have access to technology. And that is one of the biggest efforts that we're trying to help to bring that inclusion so much down and help to the residents be able to have access to that across the board. And these are part of the many things, but a lot of this is also not possible without the support and help of the library staff that are there in those communities and the impact of what they have to able to offer. And a lot of times is those staff are able to connect one-on-one with the residents, and they hear and they listen to what the community members need. And from that, we have seen people from the community, wanting to start a book club, wanting to start a book club or even a program where they're coming together to do a knitting circle. We have one in the Parkchester Library where they have come together and they knitted for local babies in the local hospitals for them, and they donated that. But again, that builds onto the community of what they want to see. And that's a piece of it that you won't get, like Tony mentioned, you won't be able to get this anywhere else without this institution of the library system. And I think that's an important effort, an important thing that we're able to see in the Bronx. And we have seen that with the tremendous impact in our spaces as well, where we have seen the programs that are being offered by the library staff there, and the responses to that from the community residents.
Can I just add, so first you can tell my colleagues are amazing. The majority of people who work in our branches started as pages. Think about it. They've spent their careers in the library. They come from the neighborhoods.
Life changer.
They are trusted because of that. And they do amazing work. Really. And that's not easy. People are yelling at librarians these days as they try to ban books. Imagine that in America. But that's what we're living through. I do want to say, the buildings are essential. Francine, hats off. We've spent $1 billion on fixing up our branches.
There is a question about the funding.
All right.
Because
Go ahead, Anna.
sensitive but very important issue, because we are talking about all these principles and values, but there is the elephant in the room also.
So the elephant that Anna's referring to is we are the perfect public-private partnership. That goes back to Andrew Carnegie. The New Arcos Foundation, in other words, essential partners to make this possible. Half our budget, our expense budget, comes from the city of New York, a deal made with Andrew Carnegie. We are currently facing a $50 million budget cut threat from the administration. We're already closed on Sundays, which is unthinkable. We need your help. We need everyone to talk to the city about everything we're talking about. But before I leave it, just because I don't want to leave a lacuna here.
No,
given
we will come back to this issue.
The research, the books are important. People come for them. And yes, we aspire to have everything. 55 million books and counting. We partner with Harvard, Columbia, and Princeton. Their private collections in the richest universities in the world have become publicly available. We don't have a word in English, Andreas, for the opposite of nationalization or privatization. We're in the opposite business of that. We are a public good, and we think everything should be available. People make sense of it as they wish, right? And to go beyond the buildings, as Andreas made mention already, we aspire to the entire collection being available. Every book ever printed should be available to anyone on the planet, not just those who can get to New York, for free online. It's all a part of the same project.
We have 35 minutes.
All right,
And
shut up.
I want to respect everybody.
I get excited.
I know. That's why we're here in a library, but that's why we are at this library, because it's not only the buildings, it's the people, and at the end of the day, about the funding, I would say. Because this is another issue, and there is a question. There are questions, actually, from what I can see on our app. But I would like to thank you, Kathleen, and I have to say that you already replied on a question which had come about the role of technology, and if technology is a threat for the work and whatever they have to do, libraries, I mean. And I want to ask you directly, Tony, but tell me by your heart, from your heart, do you afraid of technology for the library?
I don't think it helps to be afraid of technology. I think we should have our minds open to the terrible things it's doing, to our kids glued to these social media where they're getting lies, not facts, where they're getting fed invidious comparisons and made to feel badly. We have to have our eyes open to this. But that's a wrong way to think about it. We have to use the technology and turn it for public good. We're so busy criticizing it, we're not thinking about what an amazing tool it is to make our collections available. When the pandemic came, people had been saying, oh, you're investing all this money in ebooks, you're crazy. They certainly said that to me. Suddenly, we were geniuses. We didn't lose any circulation because it all shifted to online. There are issues, copyright issues, we're facing all those.
Many
we have
issues,
to be
actually,
respectful.
many.
Funding issues as well. And I'll take one more example. Again, I just want to underline, in New York City, 2 million people don't have broadband at home. Imagine living through the pandemic, trying to do your studies or your work without any connectivity. We've said the library is the place people come. That's great. That's not good enough. We've now spent $2 million piloting a project where we are broadcasting broadband from our branches for free into the neighborhoods. It's working. We want this to become a basic public utility of free basic broadband access for everyone.
And through this way,
and if no one
everybody
else is
stay-
going to do it, we'll do it.
Everybody stays connected through this way, actually, and active, consequently, Ari.
I just wanted to say that if we think of this idea that the library used to be the place that connected the depository of knowledge with the user, this, of course, with technology is not necessarily the case because you can do it online. That becomes a virtual space. But that opens opportunity for the actual physical space of the library to become all the things that you're doing. So I see it as a kind of opportunity. It opens up space for all the rest, which would not have the space. I think the big challenge is slightly different, and the big challenge for me is called big data at the moment, whatever we mean by big data. Because we have a kind of an addiction to the collection of data, let's be very honest. We collect everything, and not we, but everybody collects everything. There are actually businesses that trade with a scrap of other businesses' data, right? And what's happening with that? So where is it stored? How is it done? How much energy does it need? Do we actually know how much energy that takes? And I think that's a kind of a challenge for the library itself.
Our privacy being invaded by it.
And who is responsible for our privacy, right? Who takes care of that? And so for me, it's not really, the challenge is not for the library. For the library, it opens new horizons. It's a much broader challenge, and that is something that we need to face. What we do with it, how we protect it, how we protect ourselves, how we protect our data from being rewritten by somebody who decides to ban it at any point, right? We see it happening.
Since we're talking about the role of technology and the impact of technology, I would like to share with you a very interesting and inspireful, at least for me, and I guess for the rest of the panel, story that has nothing to do with technology, but it's food for thought. Let's enjoy it.
Mi nombre es Luis Soriano Borges, tengo 53 años de edad, soy maestro de la Escuela Rural Mixta de la Gloria. Hace 26 años creé una herramienta educativa que se llama Biblioburros y decidí un día llevar mis libros a mis estudiantes porque no hacían tarea, no tenían herramienta educativa. Y como los libros pesan tanto, y los burros habían quedado desocupados porque no habían puesto el agua. Entonces yo cogí la burra de mi casa y le monté las enjarmas estas que le ponemos para llevar los tanques. Y en vez de montar tanques de agua, monté libros. Y me fui de finca en finca, ayudando a los chicos que reunía para hacer trabajos escolares, que les incitaba para que fueran estudiantes, eran muchachos entre 18 y 21 años, en primero de primaria, que todavía tampoco sabían firmar su nombre. Dígame. Buenas tardes.
Luis's two donkeys are called Alpha and Beto, after the alphabet.
Leo muchos libros para que esté inteligente.
¿Y cuál es tu libro favorito?
Es de naturaleza y es de Bioburro.
Burro, qué bien.
lo que hacemos nosotros es transmitir la literatura infantil, llevársela a los niños, porque allí es donde está el futuro de nuestro país, de nuestra humanidad, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que un niño que se imagina cosas es un niño que va a hacer solución para su propia problemática, para su propia comunidad.
Luis's love of books came almost by accident. When Colombia's armed conflict came to his village, his mother sent him to live with his grandmother in the city of Valledupar, but it was a hard life there too.
Entonces, el único espacio donde yo veía las cosas bonitas era en la biblioteca, que quedaba como a 5 cuadras de la casa de mi abuela. No me dejaban entrar. Un día me dijo la mujer, te pones un pantalón y zapato y entras mañana. Y ahí empezó mi amor por los libros. Ahí me encontré con Alfa, me encontré con Las Mil y Una Noche, me encontré con todos los libros habidos y por haber, aunque no sabía leer, pero tenían unos dibujos hermosos. Cuando ya empecé a leer, empecé a abrirle el significado y la profundidad de lo que estaba escrito y pintado en los libros. Arranca mi amor por la lectura, arranca mi amor por los libros, y como yo estoy enamorado todo el tiempo de un libro, quiero compartirlo con el que no tiene, o compartírselo al que sí sabe que es eso.
Over the years, Luis's work became known across the country, and people sent him many books to grow his collection. These books have changed the lives of thousands of children. Luis Aragón used to be one of them.
Cuando yo vivía en la finca de mi papá, ahí nos llevaba los libros, nos los prestaba y nos fuimos motivando. Cuando eso éramos como seis jóvenes, y de ahí cada uno leíamos y nos motivamos con las ilustraciones, y de ahí fue uno de los pilares que yo me fui fundamentando para mi carrera, que es la bacteriología.
The Biblioburro now serves about 300 people in the surrounding villages and has inspired the creation of mobile libraries across South America.
El proceso Biblioburro lo que hace es ayudar a las personas que están lejos de los centros poblados a que se encuentren con la lectura, a que abran la ventana mágica de la imaginación.
Ana, can I suggest, since we have the experts here, that we hear
I
about
want
the teen centers?
allow me to say a few things about what we just saw, because the SNF Dialogues Initiative traveled to Colombia, and Aris Kalandidis also curated a wonderful podcast, a series of podcasts. There are 4 episodes, and we just launched them today on our website, on our platform. The title of this podcast limited series is Beyond Books, The Many Lives of Libraries. And I would like to hear a few things from you, Aris, because Biblioburro is just one, very unique though, but one story among many others from, but also about the libraries.
So this was actually the beginning of it, because when I worked in Colombia, I had heard of it, and I didn't know if it was a real story or some kind of an urban legend. Well, we're talking not urban at all, actually a legend, and I looked into it, and I realized not only is there a Biblioburro, that it's alive and well and still working, but there was the same story in Turkey until the early 70s. There were people carrying books on the backs of llamas, of camels, I'm sure other animals too. And in modern day, today you have buses. Many cities have buses. I mean, you have your branches in the boroughs, but then you have in other places buses that go from town to town, from village to village, and bring children books mostly, and schools bring them books. So this completely changes our idea of the library, because the library as a physical space ceases to exist. Where is the library here? It's the book and it's the user. So it's a very different idea. And that's why it was so interesting. And then, of course, starting from Biblioburro, I took it and started looking at all these lives of libraries and all these different things that all change over time. And the things that I started saying at the beginning have changed so much that you can't even go to the past to understand what is happening today.
Okay, I was just going to say, since we have the experts here, Ricky, would you give us an example of sort of how the teen center works, and that's downstairs on the ground floor here, just as another example of being innovative and meeting our audiences where they are and bringing them in.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, for those of you who may not have been to this facility, so we do have a flagship teen center downstairs on the lower level. I always like to say that this particular library can help the user grow, help a person grow, all the way from baby, newborn, all the way to teenager, then all the way to adults. And again, thanks to Francine for making that vision possible for us, and to my colleagues for that. So our teen center, you know what, Tony, you said the gizmos and everything here, but I gotta say it's pretty state-of-the-art downstairs. We do have a state-of-the-art recording studio and a media lab, and exclusive study rooms that is pretty much just age-restricted to teenagers 13 to 19. We didn't forget the adults. We made sure that, again, the 5th floor and the 6th floor was exclusively made for our adult services here. We do have a recording studio for our adults here. But you know, in the teen center, right, we do have a couple of young people here in the audience today and of course on this panel. But the teen center is basically a place for our teenagers to become the future leaders, right? The future people who will basically be our bosses, right? Who will basically be our elected officials, who will be making the decisions in the future, hopefully when we're older and we could appreciate when they take the helm from us. You know, so the teen center that has all of the state-of-the-art technology, at the end of the day, we do have kids who just come in for the library staff. Not to toot my own horn, but I am incredibly proud of my team downstairs who work every day at making sure that the library is, the teen center is the welcoming and inclusive space for them. You know, Tony, you were mentioning library staff being like the heart. Tony mentions that every time he gets to talk on a stage, how the library staff are the heart of the institution, right? The library staff focus on making this space warm and inviting, and all of the state-of-the-art technology, all of the aspects are nothing without that. You know, I like to call it a metaphor where you could put the fanciest kitchen in front of a person. If they're not a chef, what will we do with the 6-burner stove? What will they do with the double oven? They wouldn't know what to do with it, right? So the reality is that the library is also people-powered, right? The library is full of people who are making sure that people continue to get invested in their community, that people continue to learn the tools that they need to thrive in the world around them. And the Teen Center operates on 3 basic tenets, which is interest-driven learning, amplifying teen voice, and community building and holding space exclusive for them. And that could be applicable across the entire library in and of itself, right? This is a place for that people get radically welcomed into. And no one will step inside unless they are told to do so. That's not my idea. That's, I think Harris was the original sayer of that quote, that people need to be radically invited to a space. In fact, one of my librarians, one of my team members actually introduced that quote to me. And I always hearken back to it. You know, this is the area, the third place for people. And post-pandemic, in our post-pandemic world, you know, this is the generation that has really felt that impact. Gen Z, millennials, and so forth, all of us older here, we have felt the pandemic so much more closely, right? And we are calling back to community. We are trying to make sure that we remind people that, oh, we stayed home for our health and to protect each other. But remember that also you do have this space for each other.
Bravo. Can I just say, go downstairs. It's packed, as is the rest of this building. And it says something, because we can't require anyone to come. We don't have truancy officers. And we don't credentialize you for coming. So we have to be reading real needs. The library, this library, very few people live in this neighborhood. It's changing, but it's not a residential neighborhood. The teens don't live here. the place is packed. They're coming for it. And because we learn as we go. We were so impressed.
Kaylin is waiting.
Be-
Is waiting
Kay-
because
Kay-
she has to share with us her experience
Kaylin, tell us, and also
as a
Kathleen,
teen.
that we've added 20 more teen centers in our system. But we need the funding to have our libraries open for them to work. Please.
Okay, hello, I'm Kaylin. I am a page here at the library. I work specifically in the teen center. And my experience as a teen in our teen center, I should first say that I started coming here when I was applying to a job here as a youth civics intern. And I was super excited, but I instantly got lost. And I remember the first person that I met here was Richie and Janae. And from that moment, I felt welcomed. And as somebody who has been so interested in civics, especially from a young age, the ability to work on civics at this library has opened so many doors for me. At this library, I was able to learn how to go about my own programming, how to engage with my fellow teenagers, especially since I knew that my peers definitely did want to be engaged. It was just a lack of information and a lack of access. Even at my own school, which is one of the best in the city, there was a resounding lack of information about civics at all. And so that made one of my first initiatives to make a civics corner, a place where teens can come up and they can look at the actual information. It gives them different websites and links to sources, as well as different books that they're able to pick up and use without even having to interact with somebody if they don't want to, because I know myself as a teenager, sometimes I just want to kind of get in, get out, and sometimes talking to people can be a bit much. But with the teen center, I came to have a job. I came as an intern. But what I ended up leaving with was such a huge community. There are so many people, especially in the teen center, that I know by name. There are people in the teen center who regard me as their friend. And it's amazing what we've been able to do in the teen center with all of our programming that, as Richie said, is all interest-based. And it just makes you really think about what everybody in our little community is really interested in, because we have so many different programs down there. And as somebody who doesn't live in Manhattan, I live in Brooklyn, the almost central nature of this library, I think, is what draws people here. As it is at 42nd Street, close to Grand Central, it is a huge hub for a lot of students in the New York City area. And even if it doesn't seem as though it would be super easy to get here, I know that there are a lot of teenagers who come from places like Staten Island, who come from the Bronx, who also come from Brooklyn, like me. It's less about how far it is and what you get when you're there. And I think that the Teen Center is probably one of the best places I've ever entered for myself, and how it's helped me grow as a person and even helped further my knowledge as I get ready to move on to the next step of my life, onto college. And I feel as though that this is such a huge opportunity for all teens. I mean, even in my own school, anytime anybody ever says anything like, oh, I need a space to go, I'm almost begging them, pleading them, hey, you should go to the Teen Center at SNFL, because it is such a great place. And there's no shortage of knowledge there. There's nothing that you really can't learn there. There's nothing that you really can't do there. And I think that a lot of teens also don't have a whole lot of ideas of what you can actually do at the library, like what their rights are as teenagers in the city. And I feel like the library is one of the best places to learn about all that, because everything is free. And everybody who's there, they want you to know what you can do. They really want you to be able to use everything, all of your resources, to the best of your ability. And yeah, I think the Teen Center is probably one of the best places in the city. And that's maybe.
Thank you, Kaylin. Ari, would you like to add anything before moving forward? Because while we were hearing Kaylin, I thought that it would be interesting to listen a bit more from the podcast series, and especially the point where there is a reference about what happened in Serbia.
Yes, let's listen to that, and I can say something about it afterwards, because that's an interesting case.
In the rural expanse of eastern Serbia, near Velika Plana, a beacon of hope emerged amid the pandemic. The Ekaterina Pavlovich Library, an integral component of the Rural Cultural Center Markovac. The Rural Cultural Center Markovac aims to provide cultural education and social services to all, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, residency, or economic status, as the psychologist Alexandra Miladinovic explains.
Named after the first literate citizen of Markovac village, the reading room Ekaterina Pavlovich is distinguished by being a gender-neutral library, meaning that it supports equal access to works of both male and female authors. In addition, the title it offers expresses a critical stance against discrimination and all forms of violence. The reading room serves as a sort of hub for all the other activities that take place in the cultural center of the village.
It's a very interesting case because I discovered that when I was working on a project I'm still working on, which is funded by the European Union and the Horizon Project. It's looking at libraries as spaces of what we call the commons. Mm-hmm. So not so much as a space that is created, like in this case, a public library, but the other way around, where a community gets together and creates its own library. And that's the case that we have there. And it's a cultural center that the community has created. That's why we call it the commons. So you have the commoners who've created their own resource and they work in it. And there is also a second example in this idea of the commons that I have in Berlin in the podcast, which is the Gay Museum, which is something very similar. The gay community in Berlin got together in the 80s during the AIDS pandemic and decided that they need to keep an archive. And that turned into an extremely important museum. It's an LGBTQ museum today, even though it keeps the name, the Gay Museum. But it's the community. It kept together. It's being kept by the members. It's their own archive. And so besides those public libraries, we have those commons. And that's why, for me, that was so interesting. Mm-hmm. It's another concept of a library.
May I interject? Yeah, sure.
And so thank you for that example. That it's stunning to see how those works happen nationally and worldwide. You don't have to go too far, right, to see community-driven libraries. And it was so critical for me to have a teenager here on this panel when we talk about how we engage with the youth and civics. But in our libraries today, at least with my team, we really strive to say, what is it that our patrons are looking for, and how do we continue to involve them in this process? We really strive to really hearken to this notion that there's nothing nothing about us without us, right? So continuing to involve our user base and our patrons in this. And so one of the prime examples that I always talk about is our Teen Center volunteers, and one of our volunteers is behind us, Xavier over here, one of our young people. And he's part of a cohort. We do these dynamic programs that the kids get involved with. Would you know that this event center that you're in is also a dance floor and a karaoke space and crafts for kids who are queer and want to be proud about it? So we do hold incredible, multifaceted events in spaces like this that are driven by the community. A project that a colleague has been working on for many years. It happens annually, the Anti-Prom event across the street. Tony, I know you always love it. It's one of the most joyful things. The kids come through They don't have to pay for prom, for this entrance. They don't have to pay for the gown, for the suit, for the car. They could come as they are. They can come in high fashion if they really want to, but they could dance the night away in the Shorten building, which for rental can be an exorbitant cost for them. So at the end of the day, when you have this community space driven by the community, it also becomes a place of joy.
I have another example, which is from Milan in Italy. One was talking to the director of the Milan Library, who is, like Tony, a waterfall, right? With a very inspiring speech and absolutely passionate. He was explaining a project that they call the Biblioteche di Condominio, which is like the libraries of, let's say, block of apartments. And these were there were about 30-something in Milan. And these were libraries that were actually organized by residents who simply decided that in their block of apartments, they could have some common space, formerly where the porter used to be or something like that they would turn into a library for themselves. The city decided to protect them, to make them part of the network of the public libraries. People are completely free. They're still private. They're still in this condominia. And it's amazing. So I had to go to Milan to look at them. And it's the most amazing thing you can imagine. It's where, the space where the janitor used to be of the building. And it's a little library. People from all the building have brought down books and they sit down and do things together. So that's also a community-driven space at a very small scale. But the city has embraced them. And you can find a lot of that online. It's amazing.
So Francine, after all this, I was wondering anyway, but after all this, what should an architect take into account so that they can start even thinking and then designing and implementing, actually, bringing to life a library, a public library?
Maybe I should stand up. After waterfall of, that's a nice word, of all these amazing people telling about, especially also about this library, but also other ones like in Milan or in Colombia. But maybe, what could I add to it? I think it's very much, I can only tell how I do it, because I think every architect is different, so I cannot say that all architects should do that. But first of all, I just also tell you, because I also teach, for instance, at Yale for libraries, a lot of architects think that it's a storage space for books. And they put books on the walls, on the ceilings, or everywhere. But that's not. And I always say I have this philosophy of people, place, purpose, and poetry. And I think you all have told a lot about all the changing purpose of libraries. For me, it's also very much to imagine what all these people need. For instance, I think the thing you said, that it should not impress people, it should be welcoming, but also to have the awareness, and also I think we did this, I think, quite well in this building. There's some people that are very shy. They feel ashamed that they don't speak the language that well, or that they cannot handle a computer, don't have a computer, or don't have Wi-Fi. So we also made different atmosphere in these buildings, for how people are, and don't put them on the ground floor where you enter. So we really try to imagine what kind of communities or what kind of people we are serving. Also, to be honest, I went, when we started the project, we went together to the Bronx. And also I really liked how you did organize English as your second language, or that even women are knitting, how do you call it? And learning English at the same time. For me, that was very inspirational. I was so happy what was happening when you entered the building now. That we created this space of where people come, even if they are very shy and they want to come back, make a community, and having also this idea that they bring maybe later on, hey, this is a safe, nice, inspirational space, bring their kids, or they learn English, and then, hey, I go to another floor, I can help, I learn the computer, to deal with the computer, and then to go to another floor, hey, somebody can help me to learn to have a job. So that was for me very important, to understand the needs of your people. And I also have to tell that's in every country or every city very different. We did also the library in Washington, D.C. It's a different city than New York. I don't have to explain it to all of you. But also it's for me about the poetry. Why you're now here sitting what I call the wizard hat. And also creating, for me, the poetry in libraries is almost very much connecting to the identity of this place. So this was this area. We wanted to link it, also to give this view. Maybe you realize we did elevate this floor. That's just foam underneath this floor. Because we wanted you to see back to, I don't know how to call it, the Stephen A. Schwarzman building, but that it feels like one campus. So that was very important, but also why we created this wizard hat, because this used to be a space they're both from the same period. Can you imagine this? People often think that this is a building from the 80s. No, it is, I think, 4 years difference between that building and this building, but it was the Beaux-Arts period. And also, if you look across that building, you saw a lot of buildings have a kind of hat, a nice hat on it. So I called it the wizard hat on top of this building, but it's also creating, it's poetry, it's about New York, it's about this place here, and to make it different from a library, what is maybe happening in the Bronx or in Washington. So the poetry, I think, is also, the people and the poetry are extremely important I think, to make a nice library that, I think I want to give people the feeling that this building was designed by them, and they are proud of it. It's not my library, it's also my library, but it's their library. I think that's, for me, a very important attitude.
Just in case you were wondering why we chose Francine, we call her, she's a star architect globally, but she doesn't have the hubris that often goes with that. We call her the library whisperer, but maybe it's more accurate to say the library listener. To meet with the staff, to go to the neighborhoods, to see what people need, to imagine a campus that is welcoming. And you see the results.
So there was a dialogue.
There was a dialogue.
Exactly. Francine, thank you so much. Francine Huben, founding partner and creative director at Meccano Architects. Now, I have to go straight forward to the application because I invited all these people to send their thoughts and their questions, and I have to say thank you because we have many questions. You have, all of you, already referred to many of them and responded. But there is one which comes from Taylor, and thanks for this question, and it says, Tony, mostly to you, but of course to both. Helen, thank you again for this wonderful programming. How much more collaboration do you see happening with other public-private institutions like museums and their educational and archival initiatives with similar goals?
It's certainly with similar goals. We partner with the public school system. We, in effect, are the circulating library now for the public schools. We have a collection. They can't afford one. That's another argument. But we now bring library books to the classrooms, right? We never did that kind of collaboration. Or take the example I gave earlier. We were storing books in Princeton that we didn't have room for here, with Columbia and Princeton doing it side by side. We said that's not good enough. We need to share the collections. It means instead of buying 3 copies of a book that rarely will anyone read, we can buy 1 copy and have more money to buy more books. Harvard joined us, doubling the size of our research library overnight for free. It says something when the richest university on the planet says, no, we need to be part of this partnership. We are constantly looking for more partnerships.
The next question, Ari, for you, it comes from Johnny. How can libraries help bridge divides in our communities and promote understanding?
Oh, I think that's the key question.
I think that's the key question of the whole thing.
That's the whole thing.
Exactly.
I think if we've answered that, we can say goodbye. So I think Tony said the key word in that is I think we need to understand libraries and books and knowledge as a public good, right? And that means a lot because public goods are under threat. They're under very, very serious threats. And I'm looking at it a bit as an urban planner, which is my main job. I also see libraries as public spaces. I already said it. And a public space doesn't need to be an open space. It can be an open space, but that's not the idea. The library has two characteristics. It's open for everybody, and it's free. You don't have to consume. So it already creates that space, and that's, I think, extremely important. And then there's something else. I like the radical invitation. I don't know who the quote is by, but it's very good. Because you need to offer something. So you need to mediate that dialogue. Dialogue can take place. So in theory, I can start a dialogue with somebody who's sitting next to me. But if I have somebody who works as a mediator, as a facilitator, and maybe that's a new role for librarians, right? To be that kind, and I'm sure that's exactly what you do. So it has all the possibility to be that space of dialogue, to bridge those differences, and then you need somebody also to be the intermediate and facilitate all of that.
Tony, you wrote an opinion article on our platform, snfdialogues.org, that where actually you describe and you combine, I would say, directly libraries and the role of public libraries directly with how we can, directly with the quality actually of democracy we have, and how libraries are a quiet force for strengthening democracy. Why and how does this happen?
Well, it's partly democracy is a public good. And we are almost the only public good left standing. So partly we demonstrate what it means to have a public good. This, maybe this will be the last thing I should say, that this is not new, right? We are doing new things, we are innovating, we must. We innovate at scale because we must and because we can. But this isn't new. The founders of this country, of our democracy, with all their strengths and weaknesses, understood this. Ben Franklin founded the first public library in America. They guaranteed these rights. They understood that free speech doesn't work if it isn't informed. And we have to give the citizenry, all of them, that information. Fast forward, Andrew Carnegie, at the time, the richest man in America, he had a complicated relationship with his workers. I'll leave it at that. But he invested in public libraries because, like him, he knew if you didn't have anything, it was the only place you could go. He created the public libraries of New York with the largest single gift in the history of philanthropy ever. That says something. Last thing I'll say. People are coming after us now. They want libraries closed. They want books banned. Think about it. It tells you how powerful we are. It tells you, people take libraries for granted. But because we're powerful, because books are powerful, because librarians are powerful, that's why people are coming after us. Knowledge is power. Access, engagement, opportunity is power. It's what makes democracy real. And it says something that people are coming after us that should remind us of how powerful this is and how essential it is.
To both of you, history shows that protests often bring about social change with people taking to the streets to make their voices heard. But then there are libraries where people are indoors, immersed in books and their thoughts. And there comes the history of libraries and books in a very dark episodes. So, how do you think change can begin in the quiet corners of a library?
You ask complicated questions today, huh? But that's a good job. So, democracy does not live on simply one pillar. So democracy needs protest as much as it needs elections, as much as it needs libraries, and I can mention a lot of other things. And we should think of them as complementary elements of democracy. You need all of them at the same time. So whereas protest is the activist, it's the more radical type of participation, and that's about it. It's about people demanding. It's a citizenship right, right? Even protesting. A library can offer a space of a more moderated dialogue, of a more deliberative democracy, as we could call it. I don't believe in a democracy that is only deliberative, as I don't believe in a democracy that is only agonistic. But a combination of those forms is probably what we need. And I cannot imagine a democratic society that does not have those type of public spaces that offer possibilities for deliberative democracy.
I couldn't agree more. We have to model this kind of discussion, which we do. We, at a time when the universities are being torn apart and we're not seeing the kinds of open, honest discussion that we need as a public good to demonstrate that and bring people together to do it, whether they choose to sit quietly or have these kinds of conversations. I will say, it's a Greek thing. Democracy, our understandings of morality, of each other, are based on our being able to think. That's where it comes from. That's where we come to understand ourselves and each other and the world we live in together. So yes, the group is essential. This is essential. More than ever, and under threat more than ever. But in the end, we need to make sure that everyone has the chance to learn, to find their opportunity, and to think, because that's the bedrock of where the communal efforts can come from and give us their inspiration.
I see more questions, but now the truth is that I was planning to give the floor more times to you, but now the time is yours. I would like to open the discussion to you, anybody who would like to ask or share with us their views, their ideas. I've seen, Timothy, I just saw a question, your question on the application. I don't know if you want to make it directly.
Sure. Glad to. Thank you.
Hi, by the way.
Hello. Glad to be one of those partners that were mentioned earlier. So I have a question I'm an advocate. You mentioned, the palaces of the people, the libraries, and this kind of core idea. I studied deliberative democracy and spent a lot of time. So I appreciate you saying kind of the agonistic piece too there. We need confrontation. But I have little kids. And we spend a lot of time at little free libraries, which has been popping up all over the place. And I think about libraries as these spaces, these commons, if we want to think about it that way, but also sources of information, as you were just saying, Tony, is a bedrock of democracy. What do you make of this movement of trying to, maybe it's responding to the silencing, the desire to reduce information in libraries, but these little spots, these little free libraries popping up in neighborhoods, especially in more rural, suburban areas. What do you make of that in light of everything we've been talking about today as these kinds of places as being so important?
Well, Aris can speak to, he has lots of international experience. I'm a New Yorker. I think it says something about the human spirit, that these things pop up, that people understand at their gut their importance, and when they don't have them, they'll create them with bureaus or with our bookmobiles or anything else in between. It says something about who we are as human beings. We don't want to be alone in a room. We want to be in a great public space, thank you, Francine, with great staff, thank you, colleagues, right? And people will invent it if they feel deprived of it.
I think that what is happening is that we still need to lower the threshold even more, right? So here we have a case where the threshold is very low, but having those small local libraries, having the donkey, this is about accessibility.
Exactly.
And accessibility in the sense of you make it extremely easy for somebody to simply open a door and go in. And I think that's the big advantage. The bigger the complex, the bigger the building, the heavier the architecture, the more it keeps you at a distance, right? The more it comes to your neighborhood, the more it looks simple, a little dingy, could actually be more inviting sometimes.
And yes, please. Hi.
It's coming.
Hello. Proud Inwood resident, so thank you for opening with that, and I'm looking forward to that new library up there, certainly. But I'm
A month away.
Okay. Lots of changes up there, as you well know. But I work as a librarian in another city, and I'm just wondering, since this is going out to other places, what do you think other libraries, maybe without the institutional heft and resources of NYPL, can take from the models that you've created here? What do you think your takeaways would be for sort of other libraries?
I think there's room for libraries of all scales, and they need to meet different neighborhoods' needs, and Aris has spoke to this, Anna has spoken to it. I think what we are trying to do, yes, we're the biggest library. Yes, we're in New York, I get it. But we're trying to demonstrate to the field that A, you can innovate, right? We don't have to stay where we were. It's not scary. In fact, it's our responsibility to do that at whatever scale we do it. It is, second, important to listen to our constituents, our users, to be respectful of that, and to meet their needs, right? And, I would say that we have learned to be increasingly proactive. We are still the essential passive spaces. That is important. We have neighborhoods in the Bronx where people don't have air conditioning or heat, let alone computer access and broadband. But, we can meet the educational needs. We can innovate. We're not a school system. And I think that's true at whatever scale. Yes, it costs money. We have to convince our constituents when there's a question of how essential this is and not to take us for granted.
If I may add, however, I agree with all of that, and the innovations we see in libraries, innovations we see in this library is amazing. Still, the library as a passive space is not a bad thing. So you still need that kind of quiet, and it's for all of us. It's just a moment that you're away from the hustle and the bustle, and you can just sit there and just open a book, and even if you don't read it and look at the ceiling, just do it. So it should be that too, among all the very interesting, very active things that you do.
It's critically important to celebrate the small stories, right? And I say small very subjectively, right? But when Tony's talking about investment here and the fact that it does cost money for that, then you go back to the people who perhaps may be in charge of distributing the funds, and you ask them, what is the worth of that story, right? That success story. What is that return on investment? And to note the heft of the New York Public Library, and I think Kathleen can really speak to this as well. She's talking about the knitting circles. The best patron stories are those intimate ones where we do talk about how, oh, this young person came back to me and said, oh, did you remember how you helped me on that essay? I got into the college I wanted to get into. And it's just that one singular story that is not hundreds of kids coming up to party at the library and celebrate the joy and pride. But it's that success, and what is the price for that? And I think that's something for elected officials, for private donors, for philanthropists to sort of sit on as well.
We are already over time, but I would like to ask if anybody else would like to ask or share with us any thought or idea. You want? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, we can hear you. It's on.
Hello, hello. Oh, wow.
Hi.
It's amazing. I actually made it work by doing nothing. I'm a trustee of a Long Island library. Long Island is a high-density suburban area, and it's certainly my understanding that downstate libraries have the money to be enlightened social infrastructures, and they are to a large extent, and ours is too. And it's also my understanding that the upstate libraries in New York are very differently situated financially. Indeed, some of them would not even be open if their friends' organizations didn't kick in some money. I just wondered if there was someone here from one of the upstate library areas that could shed light on how difficult it is or would be for them to engage in what a 21st century library should be.
I mean, I think we all see these challenges, and it's true even in New York. We are facing a $50 million budget cut, threatened by an administration that loves libraries, right? We have to get the public to resist, right? And when we do that, we talk to our friends in Albany and say, we need more funding for libraries, not just in New York, but in upstate as well. And when we can provide services to the upstate libraries or to the patrons upstate, our ebooks are available to anyone in the state, right? On our dime. We have to do this together. We have to.
And I guess the issue then becomes about technology. And to your point, how technology can be used to basically effectively bring in the multiplier effect. So from the hubs to the small community libraries. So technology is going to play a very important role.
We can't hide from it. We have to embrace it and use it for good.
Oh, maybe can I add one thing
Yeah,
to this
Francine, yeah,
issue?
sure.
Maybe I stand in. Maybe also a little anecdote from my side, because maybe, as you know, I also did the Library of Birmingham. But I was talking to one of the trustees was one of the captains of industry of Birmingham. And I asked him this personal question. I said, why did you put so much energy in supporting this library just as a trustee? And he said, there's an economic need for libraries. And I always feel, because he said it in a very simple way, because if I invest and the library invests in all these people, at the end they become taxpayers again. That was his way of thinking. But I always feel that libraries are very much focused on, especially in my own country, in the Netherlands, or it's a book or this culture or whatever. But I just want to emphasize there's an economic need to take care of the people of your city, of your country. And that could maybe help much more a lot of people to help with the funding, the economic need of libraries.
Can I tell one story?
Yes, and we're close with this.
Almost half of our libraries were built by Andrew Carnegie. They are masterpieces of architecture. The top floor of those were apartments for the custodians, because in the day, you needed someone there at night to shovel the coal. They've been closed for decades. An entire floor empty in New York City, in the poorest neighborhoods. We've now reopened those all as teen centers, as innovation centers. We went to open the first of these in the neighborhood I grew up in Washington Heights, just next to Inwood. It's magnificent. When the ceremony, the fancy folks were done, a lovely African-American guy of a certain age in the back of the room says, "Can I say something?" I said, "Sure." He says, "My dad was the custodian. I grew up in this apartment. When I was growing up, I thought I was the richest man in the world because I had the library to myself at night. I went down there and I read books about building sailing boats and navigating by the stars. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, to graduate from college, to go to graduate school. I'm an administrator for the city of New York now. Actually, I've retired now. And I remembered what I read. The individual. It does come down still to the individual. And I built that ship, and I sailed around the world navigating by the stars. That's what we're in the business of.
What can I say now? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having this discussion, and thank you so much, all of you, for being here with us. And to all of you who watch this discussion online, I remind all of you that it's the first public discussion of dialogues series that takes place physically, because of course we've done in the past many virtual discussions, thanks to the technology from the US, but this is the first physical event that kicks off actually the upcoming events that we're having, for instance, with the SNF Ithaca initiative from the Delaware University about citizens and how actually we receive any result from the political advertising campaigns as citizens always. And of course, a few months later, the discussion with the SNF Agora from and at Johns Hopkins University about the challenges that are coming from and at universities in the US nowadays. Thank you so much again. Don't lose the series of podcasts. Tony is also joining this series with a very, very interesting, actually it's a real journey. That's how I would call it. Aris Kalandidis curated this series of podcasts, and it's a brilliant work and case how to travel through the libraries, around the libraries, and around the many lives of libraries, snfdialogues.org. And many thanks to the team of Dialogues, because we are also a community, I have to say that. And we're a community where we discussed about the issues that we plan to raise, about the issues that we plan to open to discussion with all of you, with all of us. So thank you. Thanks to all of you.
And thanks to you, Anna.